We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
With President Joe Biden making trips abroad to meet with the G7, NATO, and of course Russian President Vladimir Putin, was this a case of Biden's excellent adventure or a bogus journey for the DC veteran? As with all foreign diplomacy escapades, it is in fact a test, especially so for Joe Biden, whose critics say he can't cut the mustard on the world stage. And it was a test. But perhaps we should be asking that most important question. Who's grading it? Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and today we have a packed lineup for you. We'll be chatting to conservative author and speaker Cal Thomas on Israel's change of leadership and how the US intends to deal with its most important Middle Eastern ally. We'll be looking at the fun and foibles of Joe Biden's first foreign quest as President of the United States. And joining us later is Dave Patterson, retired US Air Force pilot and the former Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Controller, to get a fresh perspective on the Biden-Putin summit. But first, let's hear what the big players have to say on Liberty Nation's signature Say What segment. Senior White House correspondent for CNN, Jeff Delaney, highlighted an issue that is becoming more and more apparent as this presidency continues. President Biden seems to be protected from answering questions, especially those that are not pre-approved by the White House staff. Speaking on the scene in Geneva, he said this.
What we've not seen him do is answer questions like that without his aides screaming at him to stop. I have never seen a president, covering the last four of them, who is so protected by his aides in terms of often not wanting him to answer some questions.
And whether that's because he and his staff prefer him not to go off script, who knows? But one thing is clear. When he does, it's often disastrous. When preparing to leave the summit, the president got called on by a reporter asking why he was so confident that President Putin would have taken the meeting on board and changed his behavior. The ensuing explosion was just a brief flash of the temper that we've seen on the campaign trail from Joe Biden before. Here's what happened.
Why are you so confident he'll change his behavior, Mr. President?
I'm not confident changing behavior. What do you do all the time?
So
when did I say I was confident?
You said in the next 6 months you'll be able to determine.
What I said was, let's get it straight. I said what will change their behavior is that the rest of the world reacts to them and it diminishes their standing in the world. I'm not confident of anything. I'm just stating the fact.
But given his past behavior has not changed, and in that press conference after sitting down with you for several hours, he denied any involvement in cyber attacks. He downplayed human rights abuses. He even refused to say Alexei Navalny's name. So how does that account to a constructive meeting as President Putin?
You don't understand that. You're in the wrong business.
It's a summit with China.
Who we need to love? Who we need to love? Quickly, let's go. Quickly, cool.
So did the president actually get something of value from his meetings with Vladimir Putin? Well, that's the $64,000 question. The key issues under discussion were Nord Stream sanctions, the START program, and cybersecurity. In recent weeks, the issue of cyber attacks really has been the key point that has hit the American public literally where the rubber meets the road. Gas prices have risen, and we saw footage of long queues and empty pumps. And then, of course, the beef scare. This could have been a big win for the president if he came away with assurances that Russia would do all in its power to prevent these attacks. Speaking at his after-summit presser, Joe Biden suggested that he had done just that.
Cybersecurity. I talked about the proposition that certain critical infrastructure should be off limits to attack, period, by cyber or any other means. I gave them a list. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, 16 specific entities.
Well, maybe it will work. Based on what he says here, it's not certain whether President Putin actually agreed to these off-limit infrastructure demands, or indeed if he has any power to stop them happening. Remember, the Colonial Pipeline attack was actually carried out by someone in Northern California, with DarkSide, the hacking group that's made all the front pages of the newspapers, just being the middleman that supplies the malware. So 16 critical infrastructures may be protected, maybe not. The National Review senior writer, David Hassani, he gave a rather sober assessment of the president's plan. He said, "Biggest loser today, the 17th most critical infrastructure entity in America. One group that did seem pleased was the ever-reliable Fourth Estate. From the very first moment, the American public saw what kind of coverage they could expect. CNN's Jim Scutio watched the moment the two leaders first met in Geneva, and he had this to say.
You know, these moments are about moments. And I'll tell you one moment I noticed there in the Biden-Putin interaction. The handshake, Biden looked Putin in the eye with a smile. Putin looked away. Again, you don't want to read too much or too little, but again, these are about public posturing. It's about how you project strength. And that was a notable moment to me.
Naturally, CNN was roundly mocked for those rose-tinted glasses. But in the president's defense, he sure did seem to be having the time of his life. And a large number of Democrats are hailing this as an historic and significant win. Someone who disagrees with that assessment is former Ambassador Nikki Haley. Here she is speaking with Fox News.
Here now to react is former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador Nikki Haley, just back from Israel. Ambassador, what can you expect to see when Joe Biden's looking in 2 or 3 months to see if Russia changes behavior? What do you expect?
Brian, we don't need to wait 2 or 3 months. We're not going to see anything. I mean, here you've got the fact that he didn't call them out on the hacking. You know, Putin wants to say Russian hackers did it and he wasn't involved. Well, guess what? The hackers work for Putin. Putin was very much responsible for that. He just didn't want his fingerprints on it. So they didn't go and say they were going to hold him accountable for the hacking of the pipeline and the food processing company. He didn't go and talk to him about election meddling, which they've done the last 2 elections. He didn't talk about Ukraine, which Biden just gave Putin a great big kiss by giving him Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It's all he's ever wanted. It's going to get him a ton of money. It's going to make him energy independent. And it's pretty much set Putin off for the one thing he really wanted. You know, they're not talking about the fact that they're going to have the back of Ukraine and say exactly how they're going to do it. I mean, this was something where they talked about climate change. You know, and then you didn't even talk about the fact that they talked about the fact that the New START agreement and that they're going to agree on that. Well, the New START agreement allows them to stall their production. But guess who wins with that? China, because China's not involved in the agreement. So nothing's going to come of this.
Ambassador Haley not pulling any punches. And then we have former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who perhaps highlighted the main problem that Joe Biden has right now.
It's pretty pathetic when Joe Biden is more strenuous in his arguments with a reporter than he is with Vladimir Putin. You know, we believe that Vladimir Putin is going to change. Here's what's going to happen. He's going to get more and more bold. He saw the weakness of Joe Biden, the president of the United States. He never saw that when Donald Trump was in the White House. Listen, here's the problem. He didn't get the easy questions from the 7 hand-selected reporters that he had to call on. He didn't get to answer what color or what flavor of ice cream he liked. You know, when you're looking at Joe Biden, you have to think, well, the curtains are blowing, but the window must be closed.
If the president is not given free rein to speak to the press openly and honestly, the American people end up with little more than canned sound bites and a frustrated commander-in-chief who can't get back into the swing of a high-level position. The mainstream media may think they're protecting Joe Biden, but in reality, they may just be his undoing. We'll be right back after this short break. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.